Why does black consciousness provoke deep fear and hostility in modern societies? This question lies at the heart of Lewis Gordon's theoretical work on black consciousness. To answer it, we must move beyond simple sociological explanations and examine the deeper philosophical, psychological, and political structures that shape our modern world. Gordon argues that the fear of black consciousness is not accidental but reveals something fundamentally about how modern societies are organized and how they maintain themselves. To understand the fear of black consciousness, we must first examine its opposite, the formation of white narcissism. Whiteness is not simply a biological category, it operates as an imposed global consciousness where to be normal means to be white. Gordon uses the metaphor of a party crasher. Whiteness behaves like an uninvited guest who crashes someone else's celebration, declares themselves amazing and the primary benefactor of the event, and insists the entire occasion should be dedicated to them. This posture produces predictable pathologies. White supremacy demands absolute centrality while remaining intensely sensitive to criticism. It constantly casts itself as the victim even when it controls all institutional levers of society. This insecurity, masked as superiority, stems from a deep illegitimacy. The foundations of white supremacy are conquest, enslavement, and genocide. These historical crimes cannot bear honest examination. The system must constantly engage in self deception to survive. This brings us to the concept of bad faith. Borrowed from existential phenomenology, bad faith describes the human capacity for self deception. It is the act of lying to oneself to escape the anxiety of responsibility. When dominant structures proclaim "I don't see race," they are operating in profound bad faith. They claim not to see what they actively navigate, feel, and leverage every day. By reducing rights exclusively to abstract individuals under neoliberal frameworks, these societies render systemic anti-black racism invisible. Discrimination targets people as black or indigenous, not as isolated abstract atoms. Neoliberal individualism actively sabotages the tools required to address structural injustice. How did this configuration come to be? Race making is the historical and social process by which human populations were categorized, ranked, and compartmentalized under European colonialism. Race is socially generated, but calling it a social construction often obscures its real material effects. Meanings that are socially produced are socially real and have devastating consequences. The European project attempted to purify humanity through categories of exclusion, treating human diversity as a problem to be managed and eliminated. A critical theoretical pivot occurs when we analyze how dominant power structures deal with black presence. Anti-black societies prefer black bodies over black people. A body is an object, a physical entity stripped of interiority, agency, and consciousness. To be a person is to possess an embodied mind, a lived consciousness that looks out onto the world with a distinct point of view. When dominant discourses reduce human beings to bodies, they commit a profound theoretical error that aligns with the objectives of oppression. Focusing solely on the body ignores embodied consciousness and mind. Why? Because acknowledging black embodied consciousness mind introduces an unbearable truth. Through the eyes of black consciousness, the hypocrisy, violence, and injustice of anti-black societies are exposed in all their nakedness. To capture how racism operates across overlapping vectors of identity, we must engage with theories of intersectionality and multidimensionality. Intersectionality was initially formulated to critique legal frameworks that fail to recognize how race and gender compound experiences of harm. Black women fit neither the standard category of worker nor woman as historically defined. Multidimensionality expands upon this using the concept of matrices. Matrices are frameworks that unlock and disclose complex realities. Racism does not operate in vacuum, it intersects dynamically with class exploitation, misogyny, xenophobia, and colonial domination. Within these matrices, oppressed populations experience systemic invisibility. This invisibility takes multiple forms. There is erasure of historical agency and contribution. There is erasure of current suffering and systemic vulnerability. There is erasure of legal standing as injured subjects. There is erasure of linguistic and cultural validity where the dominant group's language and standards are universalized, while native forms of expression are pathologized. Finally, there is erasure of the future, the systematic foreclosure of alternative modernities and liberatory horizons. The important distinction in Gordon's political theory is between black consciousness with a lowercase b and black consciousness with an uppercase b. This is not a minor semantic difference, it represents a fundamental divergence in political ontology. Black consciousness with a lowercase b is an affected, often defensive state of awareness, born from the rude awakening of encountering anti-black hostility. It frequently remains immobile or trapped within the confines of adaptation. Individuals possessing this form of consciousness may attempt to find a home within a delusional society. They may master the colonizer's language and manners in a futile quest for recognition. As Fanon observed, this often leads inward to neurosis, bodily fixation, and psychological implosion, where the self collapses under the weight of external contradictions. To be at home under conditions of structural oppression is theoretically equivalent to a psychological enclosure that mimics the posture of a happy captive. Black consciousness with an uppercase B is radically different. It is effective, active, and political. It emerges from the realization that the avowed universals of modern liberal societies, freedom, equality, democracy, are structurally hypocritical. When the oppressed realize that the system's promises are false, the horizon expands. The focus shifts outward from individual survival to institutional transformation. Black consciousness, in this robust sense, is organically linked to the quest for liberation and revolution. It demands black power, which is nothing less than the rejection of authoritarianism and the assertion of human dignity, legitimacy, and freedom. To fear black consciousness is to fear the realization of true democracy. Anti-black societies are structurally terrified of black consciousness because its emergence exposes the foundational lies upon which their moral and political legitimacy rests. When the veil of bad faith is torn away, the defenders of racial privilege face a profound crisis. They are exposed as morally and politically bankrupt. Their reactionary retreats into neo-conservatism, authoritarianism, and white nationalism are desperate attempts to restore an imaginary purity through the elimination of difference. The fight against anti-black racism is not a narrow sectarian concern. It is a universal struggle for human freedom. As Fanon reminded us, and as Gordon forcefully reiterates, this struggle is a desperate reach for air. It is the vital oxygen that invents a new humanity. To engage in this struggle is to participate in the project of creating a world where all human beings are recognized as persons, not reduced to bodies, and where the promises of freedom and equality are made real for everyone.